Welcome to Betrayal Stories. In today's video, I want to share a story that started in the quiet corners of an ordinary life. A life that, on the surface, looked perfect. It's about how losing yourself can happen without anyone noticing, and how sometimes the road back to who you truly are begins only after everything falls apart. My name is Rachel Porter, and for most of my life, I believed I had everything figured out. I wasn't chasing fame or fortune. I wanted what most people do: stability, family, love, a sense of belonging. And for a long time, I thought I had it all. I lived in a quiet suburb outside Seattle, the kind of place where lawns stay neatly trimmed and neighbors wave at each other from across driveways. My husband, Ethan, was steady, the kind of man who took pride in doing things right. He paid bills on time, changed the oil in both cars, and never forgot to take the trash out on Wednesdays. We had been married for 12 years, and together we built a life that from the outside looked exactly like what people call a dream. 2 wonderful kids, a modest home, predictable routines. It all looked right. But sometimes, when life looks too perfect, you stop noticing what's missing. The beginning of the unraveling, it happened one Thursday morning. I was brushing my hair, staring at my reflection, when I suddenly didn't recognize the woman looking back. The same brown eyes, the same faint smile, but there was something hollow behind them. That's when the thought came. When did my life stop feeling like mine? It wasn't sadness. It was emptiness, a kind of quiet fading that crept in so slowly, I hadn't noticed it happening. For years, I had played the roles perfectly: wife, mother, professional, dependable friend. I checked every box, met every expectation, but in the process I had slowly erased the person behind all those labels. Some nights, lying in bed beside Ethan, I would stare at the ceiling and wonder if he felt it too, the distance that had silently stretched between us. We didn't argue much, but we didn't connect either. Our conversations were practical, our laughter rare. We weren't unhappy. We were just surviving. The spark I didn't expect. Then came Lucas Grant. He was a freelance designer hired to help my marketing team on a new project. From the moment he walked into the office, he carried a quiet confidence. Not arrogant, not loud, just present. He had this ability to make people feel at ease. The first time he spoke to me, it was about a campaign idea. But what caught me wasn't the conversation itself. It was how he looked at me when I spoke. Like my words mattered, like I mattered. That's such a simple thing, isn't it? To be seen. Yet it felt like I hadn't been truly seen in years. I told myself it was nothing. Just casual work talk. But then he said something that stayed with me. "You always hold everything together, don't you?" I laughed it off, but those words echoed in my mind long after. Because deep down, I was tired of holding everything together. The slow burn-it began with harmless moments. Shared jokes during long meetings. Coffee breaks that stretched a little too long. Messages about work that drifted into personal conversation. He asked about my favorite music, my favorite books, the places I dreamed of visiting. He listened. Really listened. In a way that made me remember the version of myself I'd buried beneath responsibilities. And with every conversation, a small part of me woke up. It wasn't about attraction at first. It was about connection, the kind I hadn't felt in so long. The kind that made me feel alive. But connection can be dangerous when you're starved for attention. Because it doesn't take much. A kind word, a knowing smile, a moment of being understood, to cross from comfort to temptation. The distance at home. Meanwhile, Ethan remained steady as ever, but also distant. His life revolved around work, the kids, and his phone. We were partners in logistics, not in love. One night I tried to open up. "Do you ever feel like we're just existing?" I asked. He looked up briefly, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Maybe I'm just tired," I said quickly, brushing it off. He smiled faintly, kissed my forehead and said, "We're all tired, Rach. That's just life." And that was it. The conversation ended before it began. But something inside me broke a little, because that's just life shouldn't feel so empty. the line that shouldn't be crossed. The following week, Lucas stopped by my desk with a coffee in hand. "You look like you could use this," he said, smiling. I should have said no. I should have kept it professional, but instead I smiled back. "You have no idea," I said softly. It wasn't flirting, not yet. But it was a spark. Soon, I found myself checking the clock, waiting for meetings where I knew he'd be there. I told myself it was harmless, that I was just lonely, but deep down, I knew. Because once you start depending on someone else to feel seen, you've already stepped away from your own life. One evening, after everyone had left the office, we stayed behind to finish a presentation. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the air conditioner. He leaned over to point something out on my screen, close enough that I could feel his breath on my neck. I froze. Time seemed to stretch. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. "Sorry," he muttered. "It's okay," I whispered. But it wasn't. It was dangerous, because after that moment, pretending nothing had changed became impossible. The kiss a week later, it was raining heavily. Lucas offered me a ride home. I hesitated but got in. The car smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. We talked about life, about feeling stuck, about dreams that never got lived. When he pulled up in front of my house, neither of us moved. The rain pattered against the windshield like a heartbeat. Then he said, "You don't have to keep pretending you're okay." Something inside me cracked. I turned to him. And in one small, reckless moment, I kissed him. It wasn't wild or passionate. It was quiet, trembling, human. But it was enough to change everything. When I pulled away, I could barely breathe. "We can't," I whispered. "I know," he said. But his eyes said something different. That night, lying next to Ethan, I couldn't sleep. The guilt pressed down like a stone on my chest. I hated myself for what I'd done. And yet beneath the shame was something else. A pulse of life I hadn't felt in years. The discovery I tried to bury it, to act normal. But everything had shifted. My world felt split between two realities. The life I lived and the one I had secretly stepped into. It ended the way these things always do. Not with drama, but with silence. One evening, Ethan picked up my phone to check the time. I walked in just as he saw the messages, the jokes, the confessions, the moments that crossed the line. "Rachel," he said quietly. "What is this?" I couldn't lie. "I'm sorry," I whispered. His face went pale. "Was it him?" I nodded. He stood there for a long time, breathing heavily, then asked, "Why?" I wanted to explain, to tell him about the loneliness, the exhaustion, the way I'd felt invisible. But all I could manage was the truth, because I didn't know how to feel alive anymore. He turned and walked away. And just like that, the life we had built together cracked open. The aftermath. Ethan moved out a week later. He took only a suitcase and left behind the silence of 12 years. The house felt unbearably empty, the air heavy with what had been lost. Lucas tried reaching out at first, messages, apologies, attempts to reconnect. But I couldn't respond. Whatever had existed between us wasn't love. It was an escape, built on brokenness. Eventually, he stopped trying, and I was left to face the truth alone. The rebuilding months later, I started therapy. At first, I didn't know what to say. I sat there numb, answering questions mechanically. But over time, I began peeling back the layers. One day, my therapist asked, "When did you stop showing up for yourself?" I didn't have an answer. Maybe it was the day I stopped writing, or the years I spent putting everyone else first. Or maybe it was the moment I decided that being a good wife and mother meant erasing my own needs. That question changed everything. Slowly, I began showing up again. For myself this time. I started journaling. I took walks. I cooked for the joy of it, not out of duty. I even began painting again, something I hadn't done since college. It wasn't about fixing what had broken. It was about learning to exist again, fully, honestly. The quiet forgiveness Ethan and I speak now, carefully, cautiously. We meet once a week for dinner with the kids. We talk about school, about work, about little things. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of the man I once fell in love with, but I don't mistake nostalgia for a promise. Some things can be healed, but not all can be rebuilt. I've learned that betrayal isn't just about desire. It's about absence, of attention, of care, of self-awareness. You don't wake up one day and decide to destroy your life. It happens quietly, in the spaces where love stops being nurtured. What I learned, it's been nearly a year now. The pain has softened into something else. Understanding. I've learned that guilt can't rebuild what honesty can. I've learned that forgiveness isn't a single act. It's a choice you make every day to move forward despite the weight of your past. I don't know if Ethan will ever fully forgive me. And I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself completely. But maybe forgiveness isn't a finish line. Maybe it's the slow walk toward peace, even when your heart still carries scars. I live slower now. I write. I breathe. I exist without pretending. Trying something new didn't give me freedom. It gave me truth. And truth, as I've come to realize, is both the heaviest burden and the lightest thing to finally carry. This was my story, not of betrayal alone, but of awakening.